Unit 1B, Ancient River Valley Civilizations. I am sure you have realized this is our next unit based on our Focus 5 question yesterday talking about the rivers. I am going to read through this. I'm going to pretend like all of you are sitting in front of me in class. Some of you are. And I'm going to talk about it as if I were teaching it. Hopefully this will help some of you. So the first thing I like to always do is look at the pictures. I'm like a little kid. So I love looking at the pictures of Egypt because I want to go there one day. I think it will be absolutely amazing to see some of these ancient remains that are still there. The pyramid, the Sphinx, is in ancient Egypt. On this side, this is an image depicting Mesopotamia. And this building right here is what they called a ziggurat. It was a religious temple. One of my favorite things about history is to think about the fact that the ancient pyramids and then the ziggurats, same ideas, concepts, beliefs are very, very similar between the two. Both were constructed around the same time periods, but yet the nations, the civilizations did not know about each other. So as you can see, I've highlighted a little bit. If you guys want to split your screen, that way you guys can follow along and listen at the same time as be highlighting your digital reading. I wish you had paper and you were highlighting it on paper. I will post it. Some of your families might have printers. You obviously do not have to print, but you might want to. But I am going to read along with you, so hopefully that will help. So we are talking about the River Valley civilizations. The first thing says the first humans were nomads who continually traveled in search of food. As these hunter gatherers developed better ways of doing things, they began to develop and created civilizations. So we talked about the nomads. They were the hunter gatherers that were constantly moving. Then eventually, after the Ice Age, after migration, they start to settle. And what we find is they most likely, most of them settled in these civilizations that we're about to talk about. These early humans turned to river valleys to settle down and begin their civilizations. There were 4 key river valleys in Asia and Africa that were used to start the first civilizations. So the 4 we have the area between the Tigris and Euphrates River in modern-day Iraq. If you watched my ancient Mesopotamia video, you know all about the Euphrates River. The next river is the Nile River, and that's in modern-day Egypt. Then we have the Indus River in modern-day India and the Honghe River in modern China. We will talk about all 4 of these river valleys, and we are going to try to compare and contrast them. So that is your goal while you're reading, is think about how they compare to each other and how they contrast, how they are different from each other. This last paragraph on page 1 says, civilized societies or civilizations have written languages, permanent structures like buildings, forms of government, dependence on agriculture. That means they need a food source that is stable. So they need to know how to farm. And specialization of labor. We talked a little bit about specialization. That's when you would do a job that you are good at. I am a remarkable teacher. So that is my specialization, teaching social studies. These societies have also developed customs such as formal religions and traditions in family structure, food, and clothing that have endured, which means we still see some of these ancient customs, beliefs, religions in general, traditions that we still have today. Going to page 2. Now we're getting into the information. So the geography. When the rivers didn't flood, the regions were typically in a drought. Drought means they went without water for long periods of time. Early farmers developed systems of irrigation, which is ways to control the water, taking it to where it was needed. They dug large water-holding areas called basins. They had man-made canals, dams, and water wheels, which made water always available. This helped them to harness the water of the Tigris and Euphrates River, which again, from the reading earlier, was in Mesopotamia. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about irrigation. Irrigation made farming more productive and created a surplus or extra food. This extra food could be used to feed people or for trade. It also caused the population to grow along with the number of villages. This growth caused these early people to organize civilizations, and this is why Mesopotamia is known as the cradle of civilization, because we see for the first time in history the use of irrigation with domestication, with agriculture, all leads to this surplus. And because people now have extra food, we see them never have to leave. They have everything they need in one place. So that is why Mesopotamia is called the cradle of civilization. It's kind of where it all started. Now we're going to get even more information about Mesopotamia and their geography. The Tigris and Euphrates River helped create the Fertile Crescent and is known as Mesopotamia. The word Mesopotamia literally means the land between the rivers. These river valleys offered food, water, good soil, natural protection, and trade and transportation. It was a beneficial place to live. This crescent, which is the arch-shaped land, so this is what they're talking about, this green. And think about like a crescent moon. That's why it's called the Fertile Crescent. Fertile's good farmland, crescent's the shape. Had naturally fertile soil. Today it is located in a region we call the Middle East, specifically the country of Iraq. So Mesopotamia is not a country today. It's still there. The land didn't disappear. It's just in the country of Iraq. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flooded unpredictably and made these two rivers very dangerous and destructive. When this occurred, the rivers deposited a layer of soil over the flooded area, which made the land very fertile and ideal for farming and early settlement. So I think a lot of times we ironically think that flooding is bad, dangerous, destructive. All of that is true, but yet flooding leaves behind silt, which makes that land so special, so easy to farm, so fertile. The next river valley is Egypt, the one you probably heard the most about. It is the first civilization in Africa, and it developed along the Nile River in a place called Egypt. The Nile River was the most important physical feature of the region. It originates in Central Africa as the Blue Nile and the White Nile and merges into the longest river in the world at over 4,000 miles long. The Nile River flows from Upper Egypt in the south and forms a delta in Lower Egypt to the north. And a delta is a triangular shaped area of land made of soil that was deposited by the river. So, sounds crazy, but northern Egypt, or Upper Egypt, actually, not northern Egypt, ignore that. Upper Egypt is the red, and it's actually on the bottom because the Nile River actually flows northward toward the Mediterranean Sea. And Lower Egypt is actually at the top because this is the end of the river. And this triangle shape right here, and you can kind of see the little blue river. This is actually the most fertile land in Egypt. So Egypt is called the gift of the Nile. It has earned the nickname because the Nile River gave life to the desert. Unlike the other river valleys, the Nile flooded on a predictable flood cycle. This determined the planting season for the farmers. The flooding brought rich, nutrient-filled silt. Silt is the fine sand or soil that is mixed with the tiny rocks and carried by the water. The silt from the Nile was black in color, and this was the fertile or arable for farming. The center for farming in Egypt was the delta, which accounted for 2/3 of the land. The Nile provided more than just silt for the farmers. It also provided fish, ducks, geese, and other animals. The Nile River could be used for trade with other civilizations and culture. Next river valley is India. The first civilization in Asia developed along the Indus River in a place called India. India is located on the subcontinent. A subcontinent is a large landmass larger than a continent and separated by a physical feature such as a mountain range. And the feature that separates Asia from India, or India from Asia is probably a better way to say it, is the Himalayan mountains. So in India, the Himalayan mountains separate it from Asia and provide a natural barrier for protection. So I know I did not go back and highlight for Egypt, but I will. The Himalayan mountains is going to be really important, and the word subcontinent in India is going to be really important. We're going to scroll on up here to Egypt, and I'm going to pretend like I did all of it, because we're going to, of course, highlight Nile Delta. We're going to talk about how this river is predictable, which is different, a contrast than Mesopotamia. And I think we already know about silt. We talked about that. And then how the river could be used for multiple things. So back down to India and the Himalayan mountains. The Himalayan mountains are the highest mountain range in the world. And here's a little picture. I would love to go there one day too. And another interesting geographic feature of India is India experiences distinct seasonal wind patterns called monsoons. They actually have a monsoon season, kind of like we have hurricane season. Monsoons are seasonal wind patterns that cause wet and dry seasons. In the summer, the monsoon winds blow into India from the Indian Ocean, causing heavy rains and floods. So you can see the summer, the winter, and these floods provide the Indus River Valley people with fertile soil for farming. In the winter, the wind blows from the Himalayan mountains, creating the warm winters. So here's it coming down from the mountains, here's it coming up from the ocean. And now we have China. China is our fourth river valley. China developed along the Honghe River, also known as the Yellow River. Over time, the Chinese developed better ways of doing things and became one of the world's earliest civilizations. The Honghe, or Yellow River, was the most important feature of the region. Clay dust called los is blown into the river from North China from the steppes, which are the flat, grassy, unforested plains of Central Asia, which makes the river appear yellow. And here is a picture where you can definitely tell that it is yellow, and that is clay or the los that is deposited. So we're going to highlight this. We're going to go back and highlight the Honghe River and the Yellow River, so that way we know that that's both of them. And then we're going to talk about the weather patterns. They vary widely across China, and because the river floods were unpredictable, many people and animals died. Therefore, the river was also called China's sorrow. And sorrow means like sadness, which again, if those floods were unpredictable, that means I'm sure many people, animals, homes were destroyed, lives were lost. The river stretches across China for more than 2,900 miles. The river flows from the west to the east, carrying nutrient-filled loess from the mountains and the steppes to the Pacific Ocean, which developed fertile soil. Ironically, as big as China is, only 10% of China's land is rich enough to grow crops. That is not a lot. Geographic features separated groups of people within China, while the features separated China from the rest of the world. These features include the Gobi Desert, which spreads over most of China's northern region. In the southwest lay the snow-capped Himalayan mountains. The Gobi Desert and the Himalayan mountains formed natural barriers, which helped to isolate China from others and protecting settlers in the interior. So it formed this barrier. Hard to get in, hard to get out. So question 1 says, what are three differences between the river valley civilizations based on geography? So I'm hoping we could talk about flooding here. I think that would be a really good thing. So in Mesopotamia and we go back up. Mesopotamia is unpredictable. Egypt's predictable. India didn't really tell us. It is predictable though, because they had a monsoon. And then we have China, unpredictable. So we've got predictable and, oh, I was hoping I spelled that word right and I would look really smart, but even Miss Gray has to use spell check. Egypt and China, unpredictable. Oh, spelled it wrong again. There we go. Got it. You could talk about mountains, and mountains were mentioned in India and China. You could talk about silt. All river valleys had silt. You could talk about, monsoons were in India. You don't have to write all these, you only have to do 3. But I'm going to look at some of the other things we talked about. India is a subcontinent. Egypt has a delta. Let's see. Egypt has the delta, which is where that fertile land is. India had, India had monsoons? Mesopotamia had the Fertile Crescent. It also has 2 rivers, which is different. Most of them just have 1. 3 differences, 3 things you read about. And then question number 2, and you guys, if you do that, if you push enter and it gives you a 3, just hit backspace and it'll let you type your question. So what natural barriers helped protect the river valley civilizations? So ironically, rivers can be one of your answers because that protected people. You have mountains, like the Himalayan. Oh, that's not right at all. What else could protect them? You have rivers, you have mountains, eventually the oceans and the desert will help to protect the river valley civilizations. That is a good answer for 1 and 2. Let me know if you have any questions.